Hey everybody. So with the launch of Total War Warhammer 2, there's been a lot of exciting information about some of the campaign mechanics, some of the Easter eggs, everything really. I mean, everyone's found so many awesome things about Total War Warhammer 2 that they've just been flooding the Reddit, and it's been pretty awesome. Like, stuck at work and I get to kind of pour through what everyone's found throughout the day, then go back at it when I soon as I get a chance to go home. But Weapon Master 470 posted on the subreddit a great list of all the landmark locations for the High Elves in Ulthuan. And as you guys know, the High Elves are kind of my jam. So I wanted to go through some of those. And he also did the same for Nagaroth. So big shout out to him right there. I'll be, tossing him a reference in the actual post itself. And a link to his imager. So like, as a kind of like a too long didn't read type thing, he has everything in one nice imager album, so you can take a look at him real quick. But in today's episode, like I was saying, I want to cover those unique locations, go over their campaign mechanics, as well as talk about what they are from a lore mechanic. So let's dive right in here, because really there's quite a few. There's 18 of these bad boys. So this video shouldn't be hopefully too long, but it's going to be kind of long. But let's just kind of jump on to it. Starting with the Court of the Everqueen. So this is located in Avalorn, in the capital of Cain Vale. So interesting how the flavor text sort of makes this sound like a permanent encampment. The Court of Avalorn is a great carnival, pitching silken pavilions in which elves make sport and recite epic poetry. In truth, the court sort of roves around Avalorn, almost like a carnival that would come in and out of town. In the Tyrion Teclis books, there are a series of tournaments that are actually held in these carnivals. And this is where Tyrion first meets Illyrian, falling for her, essentially. And coincidentally, this is also when the Dark Elves decide to attack, killing a large amount of the nobles, because it's in the process. And it's kind of, this is where they're having these jousting tournaments and everything, all these feats of strength, these feats of scholarly prowess. But Tyrion and Illyrian make their kind of grand escape and flee through the forest. And it's really kind of this cool portion of the book that has just these two as refugees from the Dark Elves. But the point of this court, though, is to spread merriment, entertain people from location to location, all sorts of fun-loving going on, more or less. So with that being said, the campaign mechanics sort of play hand in hand into that and are, in my opinion, quite strong. So Total War Warhammer 2 is really all about public order. It's difficult to maintain it with the ability to capture just about any city, and a lot of sources are stacked really against you. So the building gives you a whopping 10 public order, which is pretty great. Anytime you can double dip into public order for your buildings, huge bonus to you. But on top of that, you get 5 growth, faction wide, as well as an increase to your Lord recruitment rank, which will be substantial by the time you probably prop this bad boy up. And it does aid in getting rid of corruption. But that'd be more of an end game mechanic than an early boon, but a boon nonetheless. So you'll get 2 Great Eagles and a Sun Dragon in your garrison as well. Coupled with the garrison of a rank 5 city, that'll make the city even harder to crack open. That's the kind of nice thing about a lot of these unique buildings we're going to see. They give you thematic garrison units, which is, again, really strong in case anything were to happen while you're abroad. You get this invading army, whatever it is, you actually at least have a substantial garrison to fight that off. Let's jump on over into Caledor with the Hall of Dragons, and this is located in Val's Anvil within Caledor. So this is kind of a Creative Assembly created location in Val's Anvil for Caledor. And when I say Creative Assembly created location, man, that was a tongue twister, I'm saying that they kind of buffed up the lore behind this. This does exist on the map, which is cool. So they definitely took those kind of pointers, but the lore from behind it is entirely credited by them. But we've really already talked about how every portion of Ulthuan is dedicated to one aspect of their warrior caste or society in general. The Dragon Princes hail from Caledor itself, and in the current era, they mount these barbed elven steeds in the fashion of dragons, as we've seen in the game itself. But in the time of Anarion, all Dragon Princes were mounted atop these majestic ancient beasts of old, and Caledor is still one of the only places in the world you can find a multitude of these dragons. Waking the dragons themselves requires this specific rituals, these dances and songs. It's really kind of foppish, but some of the most skilled elves can pull it off. I mean, that's how you have Imric from or Prince Imric from Calador has one of the more older and stronger dragons, or more older, one of the older and stronger dragons, because he's very skilled at raising these dragons. And the Hall of Dragons little text here is, gaze upon the majestic beasts of old and realize your place within the world. And they are very ancient beasts, and as a part of that, they look at giving their services to the High Elves as more of like I suppose I shall do so. They're not entitled. I'm sorry, they're not beholden to the High Elves. So if you're going a pretty dragon heavy campaign, this building is gonna be key. You're gonna get minus 25% upkeep for dragons across all armies, minus 25% recruitment, and they're gonna come out at rank 4. Or with 1 silver chevron, if you want to think of it that way. So if you recruit 4 dragons, 1 is free cost-wise. Also, you're getting a moon and a star dragon on top of your rank 5 city too. Good luck cracking that puppy open. And the nice thing too is that this is a ritual city. This is very important for the ritual process. So it's nice that you're going to have a substantial garrison by the time you have intervention armies kicking into it. Lastly here, though, you get 20 more exotic cages as a tradable resource, which is nice because this settlement to the north within the province of Calador's Rest, or I'm sorry, I guess the settlement would be Calador's Rest. The province itself would be Calador, but Calador's Rest has exotic creatures as the resource. And once you get it to rank 3, the actual building for those exotic creatures, it gives a bonus to all eagles, phoenix, and dragons. So this is obviously going to get pretty disgusting here. So you're going to have minus 30% upkeep and recruitment cost. So stack that up to 55% now. And an additional 2 ranks. So any dragon you pump out of the Calador province is going to have 3 silver chevrons. Faru Mountain Dew. But that kind of fixes off Calador here, and we'll jump into another one over here in Trace with the White Lion Hunting Grounds. And these are located in Tor. I never really get this one right. Tor Acre, A-C-H-A-R-E in Traces. And again, this is another made-up location by CA, but it's still a very lore-relevant one, as the White Lions of Trace have to hunt and either kill or tame a white lion in order to join the elite warriors of their hinterland. And Tor Eker is the capital of Trace in the lore, and it's founded around the time of Anarion himself. And it's always kind of stood as one of the main bastions against the Dark Elves, defending the northern shores of Ulthuan for centuries. And these grounds are probably crawling with the majestic Santa lions with their braided and plaited manes, but I just want there to be chariots, like now, right now. White Lion chariots were so cool. The models were beautiful. They were really strong in the tabletop, I thought, so I'd love to see them in this game fast, but not a lore on this one, so let's kind of get into the campaign mechanics on it. I'll read the little blurb. White lions are proud predators that roam the northern forests, who are in turn hunted by Trace's warriors. So we're looking at a bit of an underwhelming one by comparison to the last 2 we've just talked about. You only get plus 2 ranks to White Lions, minus 5% upkeep for White Lions, as well as 2 in the garrison and 20 exotic animal cages. It is a rank 4 building, or unique building, so the slightly reduced majesticness of the building makes a bit more sense, but the woodcutting, hides, and now exotic animals in Trace, it offers quite a bit as far as trade for the province. So Trace can hopefully kind of cement your economy as far as giving you some additional trade value. Well, switching gears a little bit more on this, actually, we'll move over to the ancient Subterranean Palace, located in Tor Corali, within Kothic. We've talked about how Kothic has a lot of subterranean mansions, which is a direct contrast to a lot of the other nations having these sprawling mansions across the plains of Eataine or floating in the skies above Safri, all means of craziness. But Kothic has dealt with its fair share of flooding since the Sundering, so a lot of the majesty of Kothic is beneath the ground. Tor Corali being one of the 2 larger cities in Kothic. And this is a nice alternative building for Kothic to get their nobles, because it comes with the price of happening further in the tech tree than the standard high elf fairgrounds or whatever it is that generates the nobles. But as a result, though, you get some of the same benefits. 5% increase from entertainment, unlocks nobles and public order +5. But you also get your hero capacity increased. Faction-wide increases to noble ranks and a 25% income from ports in that province. And lastly, you get a noble in your garrison, which is very nice for an outward-facing outer realm like Gothic, because you're going to be dealing with a lot of raids from Norse or the Dark Elves. So it's a great way to at least buff up some of the garrison of that main actual capital of that province. After dealing with Gothic, though, let's move over to the Sacred Flame of Assyrian. And this is located at the Shrine of Assyrian in Eotane. And we've talked about how there are shrines dotting almost every portion of Ulthuan, and they're dedicated to all their many gods, namely the gods of the Gadai. And the Shrine of the Assyrian is unique in that this is where every Phoenix King is ordained via a literal trial by fire with the Flames of Assyrian. After walking through the fire, if the king comes out unscathed, then he is the rightful king of Ulthuan, unless he's Malekith. Then he just becomes Darth Vader, Warhammer Edition. The Shrine of Assyrian, though, is also where all the Phoenix Guards are housed. So these are those elite warriors who are protected by by an otherworldly shield, conferring them their ward save in the tabletop. But they're clad from head to toe in golden armor, as we've seen in the game, and they already know the exact moment they will die, but are sworn also to take on a vow of silence. And they're some of my favorite units in the High Elf roster, and as you can see, they're quite beastly from what you've played within the game so far. I really love them. I use them almost in every one of my builds because they're just such elite frontline troops. They can just take on everything. But this one has some interesting boons, right? So it's got a minus 45% construction cost for warship buildings in the province, and a minus 5% faction-wide. So that's pretty nice. Then you also get a minus 5% upkeep for Phoenix Guard, as well as a +2 rank for their recruits. I'm a huge fan of that bonus, as we've just talked about how much I enjoy Phoenix Guard. But you also are going to get 5 Public Order and a gnarly garrison of 3 Phoenix Guard and a Flamespire Phoenix. And the nice thing here is that this is a tier 1 building. I mean, it can be built right off the bat, which is, again, huge. And here's a special little mechanic, though. You get +1 of your faction's favored corruption, so chaos and what have you. So, I mean, that's pretty nifty. It's not huge, not game-breaking, but again, in the later games when you have to worry about that, or later portions of the game when you have to worry about that, it is great that you have something literally in the heart of your empire, if you're High Elves, pumping out untainted for you. That's going to always be a benefit. So we'll move on, though, to the Royal Illyrian Stables, located in Tor Illyr in, well, Illyrian. And Illyrian is the land of horses, right? Like the Rohan of the Warhammer world. So only a lot less North themed and a lot more, again, foppish. But Dark Elves steal into these lands to capture Black Elf steeds, to turn them into mounts for the Dark Riders called Dark Horses. And we've talked about that a little bit in our flyover campaign video. But the Illyrians see, or Illyrians, see a great deal of conflict, as it is one of the first inner kingdoms to face any invading army. But they are brash and wild, even by elf standards, with these grand competitions of the horse. You know, they prize their steeds really above all else. And for any of you cav-happy generals, such as myself, this is really a good building to be going for, because it's a nice little upgrade to the faction. So it's a minus 5% upkeep to Reavers and Silverhelms, and a +2 rank to both units as well. Then you get 2 of each Reaver in the garrison and 500 additional income. So I'll be honest, this is kind of an underwhelming building by comparison, since it is a tier 5 building, and maybe some public order for the province itself, since Illyrians venerate horses so much. But I mean, I can see why there's no reduction to recruitment costs on units that are already so cheap as is, and especially if you're already taking Tyrion, then you already have a minus to the recruitment cost of a lot of these units, or a minus to the upkeep of a lot of these units. So I kind of understand the line they're drawing here, but at the same time, maybe not a rank, maybe not a tier 5 building. This could have been probably a tier 4 because of the level of boons, benefits. I mean, we take a look at some of the other tier 5s we looked at and it's like, whoa, holy shit. This one, pretty good, but still. So we're gonna actually go into a series of buildings in the same region, province, whatever. It's gonna be a little irritating here, guys, but bear with me, because there's a lot in what we're about to just talk about. So we'll start with the Glitt'ring Tower White House, and this is located in the Glitt'ring Tower in the Straits of Luverne. And we've talked about this briefly when we did the campaign flyover as well, but the Glitt'ring Tower is really the vanguard defense for the 3 gates of the port of Luverne, Ruby, Emerald, and Sapphire. And the Glitt'ring Tower acts as a beacon for incoming ships and warning for raiding vessels, as any ship coming into Ulthuan is sandwiched between the Luverne Sea Guard defenses ranging the entirety of the Luverne Strait and the Glitt'ring Tower's forewarning system. And this one, you'll get pretty early in the tiering campaign, which is nice as it is a tier 3 unique building, meaning it should probably be the last on the Glitt'ring Tower, but still you can jump onto it pretty quickly. It has some good early benefits as well, 5% trade tariff or trade agreements across the faction, and 5% income from ports. Couple that with Kothic slightly later in the campaign, and that's 30% trade from ports in the Kothic region only, because that 25% to ports is exclusive to Kothic. But the garrison is nice too for an early garrison, right? 1 bolt thrower and 3 Luverne Sea Guard, that's pretty great. And I wish it had some public order on it as well. The Glitt'ring Tower instilling a sense of justice in the society. But I think I just have to have a boner for public order in this iteration of the game. But I mean, you can also tell that this thing is going to be, it's going to see a lot of combat, especially in the early game. So it's nice that they have this pretty early accessible unique building to get you up on and running on a pretty sizable garrison. And another building here, a Straits of Luverne, or the Harbor of Luverne, or the Gates of Luverne, whichever you want to call it. This is located in the, okay guys, it's in the Straits of Luverne again. So we don't need to go over much of the lore here, as we just touched on it with the Glitt'ring Tower, but this is the gateway into the Inner Kingdom and safeguards the nation, as well as the capital from naval blockades and invasions. And a lot of the deeper lore is covered in our campaign flyover video that I've mentioned a couple times here, so I will link that at the end. But so we have 3 levels to deal with. A tier 1, 3, and 5 building. And we'll break each one down with a level associated with it. So the Straits of Luverne is level 1. That's a tier 1 building. That gives you 300 income, 10 growth, and makes sense. It's a port. The Harbor, which is the level 2, that is the tier 3 building. That is 600 income, 20 growth, 5% tradable resources, and +1 to your Luverne Sea Guard. That's pretty great. Now, the third one, the tier 5 building, the Gates of Luverne, that's got 1,000 income, 30 growth, 10% tradable resources, and +4 to the rank of your Luverne Sea Guard units. So you're getting silver chevron Luverne Sea Guards out the gate, no pun intended, recruiting from the entire province of Luverne, which is pretty nice, as you all know how much I love the Luverne Sea Guard. And they're already pretty damn strong in campaign as it is, and you spend a lot of your time in that portion of Luverne to begin with. So you do reap some early benefits of this in the tier 1 and 3 buildings. Not a whole ton of late game tier 5 benefits, but you still do get those, as I think that the later game is spent more with Luverne Sea Guard than with archers. So the next building, though, I bet you can't guess where this is, because we still haven't left Luverne yet. So this is the last one, I swear. It's the Throne of the Phoenix King. And the court of the Phoenix King was moved, from a lore perspective, from Nagaraith to Luverne after Daenarian's reign. And there it has remained really ever since. And as elves are very staunch and upright in their stuffy traditions, that's why it's just not going to budge. But the Phoenix King holds court with all the princes and nobles of Ulthuan, and some staying for prolonged periods, acting as direct advisors to the liege of the land. Really, one thing's for sure, just as the flavor text says, this is where the intrigue and influence of the High Elf Kingdoms is played out. Let me read that text here for you. At the court of the Phoenix King, many come to petition the Finubar, and play their intrigues. I should probably say the Phoenix King. Not sure. But it's always weird how you like those like, oh, did you save a newspaper with like a typo on it? It could be worth millions. Weird. Neither here nor there. But one thing I think is kind of upsetting about this, but at the same time is probably for balance, is the tier of this building. Again, tier 5. It grants 1 influence per turn. And by the time really you get the funds and Empire to run this building, I don't think an influence on that small of a scale is going to be hugely beneficial. I mean, either way, I'd rather have it than not have it, but still, 1 influence at the court of the Phoenix King seems pretty insubstantial. Again, though, I understand maybe if it is from a balance perspective, whatever, but just 1, But from there, you do get a nice +10 public order. You know how I feel about public order. But here's the best part about the building, though. You get +2 rank for both heroes and lords, with a +1 capacity for heroes as well. Couple that with the influence, although minor, and hopefully you'll have a beefy Aliastar in no time. What seems to be like the clone of Korhill, or what they're going to be using as Korhill if they don't add him in. Finally, though, moving away from Luverne, we're going to jump into the Black Citadel of Anlek. And this is located in Tor Anlek within Nagaraith. And this is probably one of my favorite unique buildings, as there's so much history around Torrenlec as a whole. Anarion hailed from Nagaraith, as we know here, but this is where he made his seat of power. The court of Anarion was held in the fortress of Tor Anlec at the time. But after he died and Malekith rose to power, he took over his father's ancestral fortress, as you would assume. But during the Sundering, it was where Malekith led the majority of the war from. And in the final moments of the Sundering, Torrenlec was sent beneath the waves as a result of the massive magic backlash from the Great Vortex. That same backlash that they talk about at the very beginning of the elf campaigns, and how they sent those big, like, it looks like these magic missiles into the Great Vortex, and how Kallador Dragon Tamer came forth to defend the land. But with it, he caused this big backlash of magical energy, which sent a lot of Wolfwind under the waves, and Nagaraith, to protect themselves, rose themselves up from the ground. All like Hagraith and all these things that have become the cities of Nagaroth are these cities that float up from Nagaraith and float away. But it's interesting to see it in the game, to be totally honest with you, and I really like that they're using it. It's typically portrayed as ruins, so it's cool to see it as a Dark Elf looking citadel, and showing where the Dark Elves get their kind of architecture from, right? So this is kind of one of the primogenitors of all the Dark Elf buildings. And when I say it's typically seen as ruins, is because they're constantly submerging this thing and bringing it back, submerging this thing and bringing it back in the lore. But you get some pretty great benefits for using it too, you know, +10 to public order and +25 income from all buildings in the region. And the special benefits of the building, though, make it pretty impregnable. 50% ammo during siege fights, and 2 Dragon Princes, along with 3 Gate Guard, and finally, -10 leadership for sieging opponents. Pretty huge for an economic powerhouse in the region as well. So I'm really stoked on that, because we've seen how pretty devastating High Elf range is. I mean, they have range comparable to Deepwood Scouts, which is pretty damn awesome. But on the top of it, they just kind of, if you get them really up there as far as their reload goes with your Lord and in his red line, you basically have like a rapid fire arrow launching machine. So it's pretty damn cool. I wish that we had Shadow Warriors, but I'll settle for the Black Citadel of Anlec until we get Shadow Warriors. But so the next building here is the Shrine of Cain, and this is located in the Blighted Isle within Nagaraith. And the Blighted Isle is extremely important to the early history of the Elves, and this is where the dreaded Widowmaker, the Sword of Kane, resides, and the final resting place of both Anarion and his mighty dragon in Draupnir. And this is fabled to be one of the sons of Draupnir, the great father of dragons. And so the sword bestowed a bit of Cain's godly power on the wielder, but it also kind of gave a little bit of Cain's bloodlust, I guess you could say, and malice. And eventually it corrupts Anarion. And as he battles for his people, for the good of his people, he kind of becomes this bitter, cold individual. And the Blighted Isle swaps hands numerous times in the elf history between Dark and High. But this is where we have our Shrine of Cain, which is worshipped by actually both elves, but shunned a little bit more from the High Elves more than anything. But keep in mind, this is going to be the same province as Tor Anlec, but a lot of the benefits don't stack. +15 Untainted, +1 EXP for all units in all provinces, and +15% income from post-battle loot faction-wide, which is pretty nice for a tier 1 building. And when I say don't stack, I mean that there's nothing that stacks from the benefits of Citadel of Anlec. These 2 buildings, their benefits will stack in total, but like, for instance, Anlec doesn't have anything about Untainted, is what I mean. So you don't get any kind of additional benefits. But you do get 2 Phoenix Guard and 2 White Lions, and they do get a lot better of a garrison with just a tier 1 building, which is really great, because the garrison building for the High Elves is a tier 2 building. So, you know, you can make this right off the bat, and at least gives you a pretty stalwart front line to hold the line at the Shrine of Cain. Opposite of that, though, we have the White Tower of Hoeth, and this is located at Hoeth within Safri. Sort of another, you know, no-brainer here. But the White Tower of Hoeth was commissioned by Belcorhadris, the Scholar King, one of the great Phoenix Kings of old. And he was the Phoenix King most dedicated to the arcane arts, and created this grand tower as sort of a tribute to Hoeth, the patron god of scholars, wizards, philosophers, and the such. And we've talked about him in the Kadai video. And in the lore, the tower is covered by a series of runes, glyphs, and enchantments that really protect it from the outside world. And we've also talked about how the inside is almost like kind of like Harry Potter-esque, with magic revealing certain pathways to the seeker that the pathway, like, oh, these are meant for the path for the seeker's heart or stuff like that. It's very kind of romantic in its sweeping portrayal of how this tower works. So we get a lot of amazing things from the Library of Hoeth, and it's probably one of the best unique buildings in my opinion, because you get both lore masters and mages. And with that, you get +2 capacity for lore masters and +3 rank on lore masters with a +2 rank for mages. So your casters are just gonna come out juiced, bro, just fucking jacked. But from there, since the elves are so focused around magic, you get +3 winds of magic, which puts you halfway through like an Earthblood, assuming you get a solid roll. But also you're looking at a nice 6% increase to research rate. And lastly, it is going to unlock the Sword Masters as both a garrison and a recruitable unit. And that's one building, 3 units, worth the cost alone. Now, honestly, that's just level 1. So if you progress to level 2, you're going to get double the winds of magic, double the research rate, and an additional 2 slots of mages and lore masters, with a whopping +7 rank for lore masters and for mages. So with Safri being so pissed off at you from the start, this will be one of the first unique buildings you get access to outside of Val's Anvil, more than likely. Or if you confederate with Illyrian or Gothic, you might get access to those too. But I know in my campaign, Illyrian and I are firm friends, but Safri is just burning up the whole entire Eastern Kingdom and wants to just kick me in the teeth. Speaking of being kicked in the teeth, let's talk about horses. So the Hall of Charioteers, the Palace of Tirnoch, those 2 buildings there rank up from one another, is located at Tor Anrock within Tirnoch. And Tirnoch is where, well, the Charioteers of Ulthuan hail from, hence the name Tirnoch. Charioteers, you guys get it. With a lot of the lands being swept under the sea during the Sundering, not much is left of the once magnificent realm, to be honest. And CA did a great job of making it look pretty sparse. And I do love how they embellished on things that weren't necessarily important in the lore and sort of made it their own, as this is not really a significant in the lore anywhere. Like no one really talks about the Hall of Charioteers or the Palace of Tirnoch, maybe like a passing sentence or here and there. And I like that CA kind of tried to pull a little bit more out of it and make it more alive. And I really like that. Like I like how we've seen the map of Ulthuan now and how they've put a lot of character into it. So obviously this building is going to be focused heavily on the chariots of the region's namesake. So you'll get a +5 public order. Yes. Then +2 experience for chariots, as well as access to chariots themselves and the Garrison of Tirnoch chariots. Not to be confused with Ithelmar chariots, which are the close combat variant. Now the level 2 building gets pretty pumped. So that's dishing out 10 public order, -5% upkeep for chariots, +3 EXP for chariots, and 2 more chariots across all, or +2 XP for chariots across all provinces. But lastly, you're going to get a whopping 50% income from all buildings within Tirnoch, and that is massive. So at least you're getting quite a bit of benefit out of using these buildings. And it's really interesting. There seems to be no real rhyme or reason to tier 4, 5, 3, whatever buildings having super stats. Like we saw everything in, or we saw the Shrine of Cain or the Shrine of Assyrian being tier 1 buildings and just being super good. And we see the Hall of Charioteers, the Palace of Tirnoch, having a pretty strong economical bonus here. But I don't know. I'm pretty stoked on that. So that's going to round off our Tirnoch here, and we'll jump into our very last option in the Amphitheatre of Everest. So this is located at Tor Everest of northern Everest. And they a little blurb from it. They say of Tor Everest that they say of Tor Everest that it is easily as grand as any elven city of old. And we've talked a little bit about Tor Everest, but in the lore, it is kind of sparse. They are kind of a grimmer folk. Gothic and Everest make up for some very good sea elves, sort of. Sea elves are typically the name given to elves that live in the old world, but they are hardy sailors. And Gothic and Everest have a lot of the range units. I'm sorry, the flying units, like the Lothern Skycutter, stuff like that. So there's not a ton here on the Amphitheatre of Everest because it is very kind of obscure. There's not very much I remember in the lore talking about how Everest was a center of entertainment and great revelry was there to be had, and if anything, that'd be Averlorn. But it does give you an income of 1,200 and a public order of 10, and you guys know how much I love that. But you do get a nice 2 silver helms with shields, which can be a little underwhelming. But in the campaign, I feel like silver helms are way better than they are in the actual multiplayer. The multiplayer, I feel like they just kind of fall short. But that kind of rounds out all of the buildings here. But what I do want to go into is Ulthuan as a whole. And obviously some of these benefits are going to stack. So let's look at what Ulthuan gets. As a whole though, again, once you unify the entire nation. And this is going to get pretty gnarly here, so bear with me again. This is, again, things that are going to be faction-wide, all forces. That's what I've seen from the list here. And do let me know if you think that these stack differently. I've always been under the impression that if you make the level 1 and the level 2 of a building, you get both benefits. So if you think otherwise or you know otherwise, do let me know, do correct me. I'd love to get that set straight. But needless to say, it's going to be pretty worth it to control all of Ulthuan for Tyrion. I mean, hell, even Malekith, since they both start so close. But let's go down the list here. It is quite of a doozy. So you get influence +1 per turn. You get the Lord rank +3 across the whole faction. Hero recruitment rank +3 across the whole faction. And this is obviously, again, aside from what you get within the individual provinces. This is just the things that say faction-wide, all provinces, all nations, all armies, stuff like that. Lore Master rank +10, Mage rank +7, Winds of Magic rank +3. I'm sorry, +6 on that. Research rate 12%, Exotic Animals 40, Favored Corruption +1. And then as far as upkeep goes, you get -25% from dragons, -5% from white lions, -5% from Phoenix Guard, 5% from Illyrian Reavers, and 5% from Silver Helms. You do get a -25% recruitment cost reduction from dragons as well. Then as far as unit experience goes, you get +2 to, this is going to be +2 for everything up to what I say. So +2 for White Lions, Phoenix Guard, Illyrian Reavers, and Silver Helms. Then +5 for Lothern Sea Guard. Then another +2 for Chariots. Then lastly, you get a +1 for all units. I believe it's the Shrine of the Widowmaker is what gives you that one. But the construction cost has all construction costs is -5% for warship buildings. An additional tradable resources +15% in total. And you're going to get additional 5% income from entertainment, trade, and ports, and then lastly +15% from post-battle loot. Oh my god, take a breath now. But that's what it's like to control all of Ulthuan in the campaign and create these buildings we've talked about. So this should give you guys a really good idea of the unique buildings, of the lore of a lot of them, but also as well give you a lot of the idea for what's beneficial to you. What do you want to go for as a specific general in the High Elf nation? Do you want to be a Cav general? Do you want to be a Lothern Sea Guard focused general? You can now kind of shotgun for those buildings now that you know which ones are going to be directly beneficial to you as the kind of High Elf general you want to be. But thanks for watching here today, guys. That kind of wraps up this video. If you did like this one, I will definitely do the one on Nagaroth. Big thanks to Weapon Master again. It was really huge of him to post this up, and I was talking to him back and forth. So he provided me this picture that gives you all of Ulthuan here. So again, thank you, huge Weapon Master 470. You're doing the Lord's work, son. But have a good one, guys. Take care.